Hi, you might remember me as the narrator from that awesome presentation you got to see about forest fires. I do hope you found it to be both informative and entertaining. Now, a lot of work went into creating that presentation, and today I would like to focus on my contributions to the project in the presentation. So, as we will later see, a lot of my work can be seen in the presentation itself, which I created from start to finish, but I also made some contributions in the research department. And that's actually where I would like to begin, is by talking about the research I contributed and how our research system as a group worked overall. So one of the issues, well, issues is a bit of a heavy term. One of the things we were working with was the fact that we weren't sure what information we were going to need. We knew our topic was going to be forest fires, and we knew we were taking an informative approach, but we weren't sure what information we'd be able to include, just given the time constraint and the way we were going to create our presentation. So a lot of our information didn't end up getting used. For example, the fact that 85% of forest fires are actually caused by humans, according to the National Park Service in 2018. That was some of the research I was able to find that we weren't able to include due to time constraints. However, the other bit of information I was able to find, which is the fact that forest fires are dependent on three things, which are heat, oxygen, and combustible fuel, according to the World Boreal Science website, was actually included multiple times during the presentation. And that pattern can kind of be seen across all of our research, where some of it ended up being used, some of it wasn't. We wanted to be flexible with the information we had so we could create the best presentation we could. And speaking of the presentation, let's go ahead and move into that and talk about my process of creating the presentation. So I volunteered to create the presentation since I was familiar with a service called Powtoon, which I'd used before in middle school, and I knew you could use it to create very professional looking presentations. Now, what I didn't remember was how difficult Powtoon was to use, but I'd already volunteered and it was time I needed to get through it, so I did. There were a lot of frustrations I ran into. We're actually going to cover that in just a little bit, but ultimately it wasn't too challenging of a task actually figuring out what the presentation was going to be about, because all of the information was provided to me in a very concise, organized outline that my other group members provided. I was effectively translating that outline I was provided into the presentation you saw. I was even able to use the main points of the outline as the main points of the presentation. It really made the process easier. However, there were hiccups, and I'm going to talk about those now just to sort of emphasize what was overcome in the creation of this presentation. So first of all, we had issues with Powtoon. There was just a limited availability in terms of images I was trying to find, and there was just a lot of frustration and not getting exactly what I wanted, but I think the end result ended up being quite all right. And then there was a big issue with time, and that issue was that Powtoon doesn't allow you to export videos over 3 minutes unless you pay an over $100 subscription to their services, which I was not about to do. I had to get around this by exporting 2 halves of the presentation and stitching them together in external software. It was a big headache, but ultimately we got it done. And another big issue I had was getting the narration recorded. I struggled a lot with, I would stutter on one word in the whole 3-minute span. I'd have to start over, or my dog would bark or something. I had to record the narration about 15 or 16 times to finally get it where I wanted to be. And I think that's really reflective of the presentation and the work I contributed as a whole, because ultimately that's what this took. There was a lot of work, there was a lot of time, and I think that's reflected in our presentation. I feel it came out to be very informative, entertaining, and professional. And frankly, I'm proud of it. I felt like it was a good presentation, and it met all the requirements and just did what it was supposed to do and did it well. I think it just goes to show that you can't stop a Boilermaker that has grit, persistence, and access to modern technology. Thank you.